welcome to another episode of Four Corners. Andy Oladipo, former world champ Barry Jones. Now we're discussing, I think, still the biggest star in world boxing, Canelo Álvarez. True or false?
True. Most definitely true. He's still a massive draw, really is. And still a very, very good fighter.
Yeah, very, very good fighter. Massive draw, undisputed at 168 pounds. But it wasn't always money, glamour and fame for Canelo Álvarez. It all started a bit different back in Mexico.
Estamos parados frente a la casa donde llegamos en el año 99, cuando Saúl tenía solo 9 años. Aquí es la secundaria donde él estudió. Le decían cosas por lo güero, lo pecoso. Enchilado, porque a veces te comes un chile y te pone rojo. Y lo empezaron a respetar porque siempre fue un niño no dejado. Entonces, como ya los muchachitos ya sabían que él era alguien que si le decían algo, pues no se iba a dejar, pues ya lo empezaron a dejar de molestar.
Empecé a trabajar primero vendiendo paletas en los camiones con mi papá. Y en Juanacatlán, pues empecé a trabajar en los ranchos, dándole a los cerdos y a las vacas, ordeñando, sembrando magueyes, con un padrino que tengo en Juanacatlán.
Ese muchacho es muy disciplinado. Sí. Bueno, conmigo fue disciplinado. Yo le decía, esto vas a hacer, y esto hacía. Yo le decía, te vas a ir a llevar tantas vacas a tal lado, vas a llegar a lavar esto y esto y eso. A veces hacer travesuras. Se iban a nadar en las presas, pero fue un niño muy sensible.
Era lo que más disfrutaba, me encantaba estar ahí.
Esa es su casa de él, o sea, aquí se crió él. De muy chico a una edad donde ya se lo llevaron ellos a boxear. Y le dije yo, mijo, porque te vaya bien, a volar.
Yo empecé por mi hermano más grande. Yo lo vi debutar a profesional. Y desde ahí, desde cuenta que se me pusieron los ojos como corazón, en forma de guante. Desde ahí dije, yo quiero ser boxeador, quiero ser boxeador. Después llegué con Chepo ya a un gimnasio bien.
Yo ya conocí a Saúl porque lo había visto en unas peleas amateur. Me preguntó Rigo qué me parecía. Le dije, es un muchachito muy fuerte. Tiraba muchos golpes, pero no cabeceaba ni en los velorios. Pero al poco tiempo nos fuimos dando cuenta de que no solamente era un niño fuerte, también aprendía. Y todo eso que le enseñábamos lo llevaba a la práctica a la hora de hacer sparring.
Pues yo le ponía todas las ganas del mundo. Y Chepo me veía y también él me ponía la atención. Las mismas ganas que yo le echaba, la misma atención que él me ponía. Yo me iba del gimnasio, iba caminando al camión, ¿no? Iba pensando lo que me había enseñado Chepo. Me dormía pensando, como una tarea. Me iba y la repasaba 1000 veces en mi casa. En un año ya me sabía todo. Estaba listo para debutar a profesional.
Fue en el año 2008. Estamos hablando que Saúl tenía 18. En algún momento, como que ya no quería seguir en el boxeo, porque recuerdo que, le pagaban nada cuando empezaba a pelear. Le pagaban a veces 1000 pesos y lo demás en boletos, y si los vendía, pues ganaba, y si no los vendía, pues ya era su rollo, ¿no? Entonces, él traía ganas de un carrito y así, y decía, pues yo ya me quiero poner a trabajar. Se desesperaba. Le dije, hermano, tú tienes algo que casi nadie tiene. Eres mexicano, pelirrojo, cabrón, y eres muy bueno para hacer lo que haces. Para mí, tú vas a ser campeón del mundo y vas a hacer historia.
I feel like you can almost copy and paste most of the Mexican sort of superstars we've seen in the last 30 years. And it's the same story with Canelo, isn't it? When you think of all their sort of hard upbringings, which forces them to turn pro very early. Canelo turned pro at 15. And you know what's funny as well? We nearly lost a 4-weight world champion after his first professional fight.
It's just madness, isn't it? It really is. But the fact that, turning pro so young, you just got to think, you think back to when you were 15, what you were doing. Yeah. Like I turned pro at 18, and people said, that's too young. And he was too young. Like just a boy, really. But 15.
15 fighting men.
Oh, it's just madness. Whatever the quality of those men were. By the way, there's a Miguel Vasquez early in his career. By the way, he went on to be a world lightweight champion. Yeah. So there was some decent quality early in his youth. He was boxing. It's just absolute madness. But it built a steel in him very quickly.
There was an amateur career. It wasn't a big one. I think he had like 45, 46 fights as an amateur. What's the benefits of turning pro and doing it that way, as opposed to maybe what the Eastern Europeans do, where they have 300 amateur fights, 400 amateur fights, if we're talking Lomachenko? Pros and cons of both.
Well, it depends on the quality of fighting. If you turn pro at 15 having wars, and you're not that good, and then by the time you're 19, you're 18 even, you're done. You're worn torn already, unfortunately. And that can be the same with the amateurs. Having a long amateur career, sometimes you turn pro too late, and your best years are behind you. But it's how they're bred in Mexico. It's just I don't know how, it's just different. They all turn pro really young, and they all have these long, massive careers. So before they get to, it's like promoting back in my day, back in yesteryear, in the black and white TV days. You have a longer career, a longer apprenticeship to develop your skills, your ability, your comfortable you are in the ring with your styles and other styles that are presented to you. So he gets that wealth of experience, so by the time he gets to fight for the world title, he's already 30 fights in. And
I guess he gets that wealth of experience as well, because 6 brothers, all of them were boxers.
Yeah.
So there's no way there wasn't a ring in the back garden where they're all sort of throwing hands with 16-ounce gloves. They must have.
Of course you do. And I guess you find a lot of that with a lot of boxing people, families, and and successful boxers. They follow a sibling into it. It's very usually the one who went in first who ends up being the best. It's usually the ones who follow, because you learn from the other one, and also you get the toughness of getting beat up by your elder brother, like I had to. It's things you learn along the way. So, and also when you're not from a financially secure area, then sports in general tend to be, more than academia, tend to be your way out. And in Mexico, boxing's everything.
You know what I find astonishing? We'll talk about sort of his career and where he is now, but what I find astonishing with fighters that sort of switch and change coaches and trainers, I mean, he's been with Chipo and Eddie since the get-go, which I find, again, with what's happened in his career, and you know what people are like, one defeat, you jump ship, he's stuck with that team, that camp, for what we're talking now, 18, 19 years. Yeah, and they've learned together. That's the important part. He hasn't gone for more experience when he needed it at certain times. They've evolved and learned together. So I think that unison and that bond, and I talk about it all the time, and I'll continue to say it, that trust in coach and fighter is almost, if not more important, than the knowledge that they give you. That sounds ludicrous when you say it, but when your back's against the wall, you need that more than anything, that trust that you're giving the right information at the right time. All right, so here we are. Canelo is a 15-year-old turning pro, has those early fights, takes that step up though, and the first big step up, some will say, maybe came against Miguel Cotto's brother. And that was a big one. It's funny because he would actually go on to fight Miguel Cotto a few years later.
Saúl Canelo Álvarez. He just was this legend coming out of Mexico, everybody talking about him, a Mexican with red hair and who is beating everybody.
In many countries, in Britain and the US, for example, he would have been nurtured towards an Olympic Games when he was 17 or 18. In his case, he turned professional at 15. In another country, he might have been nurtured, as I say, to go towards the next Olympic Games, but he turned professional at 15, and judging by the results in the ensuing years, then that's been a wise decision.
And he stunned Gonzalez. Gonzalez hurt for the first time in the fight, and there it is, it's over!
That was a cluster of fights in a short space of time, and was really important in the development of Canelo in terms of his psychological development, confidence, but also in taking on a range of different opponents. Against Shane Mosley, taking on a former legend, so he's got to deal with taking on the reputation as well as the man. And sure, Mosley was past his best, but Canelo could hardly have been a more emphatic winner on that night.
Still undefeated and still WBC Super Welterweight Champion of the World, Saúl Canelo
I remember when Canelo was scheduled to face Floyd, and that was a big deal. That was a fight that had kind of piqued global interest. You know, Floyd was already Floyd, and Canelo was coming in as this kind of hot young star who was beating everybody. He was 23 years old, he was unbeaten, he was expected to be the future of boxing.
I remember thinking, I can't believe they're letting Canelo Álvarez go into this fight. But knowing him now, that decision would have come from him, because he would have looked at the opportunity to fight Floyd Mayweather.
But nobody back then thought he was a great fighter at that point. And he went into that fight with, I think, the worst plan in the history of sports game plans.
Canelo Álvarez. Floyd Mayweather.
You protect yourself at all times. And what I say, you must obey.
You never know. That's the way he comes at you with these different angles.
He'd missed and been made to miss so often in the fight that he seemed to be very wary in the later stages. But he was up against the very best in the world at that time, at the age of only 23.
The famous line is, you know, you don't lose, you learn. And that's very true in boxing. It was a little bit of a lesson at times from an old master.
Canelo came back stronger and come back harder. It's all about how you come back and how your mindset is. You have to be focused, you have to be ready, you have to be hungry again.
I always find it amazing to look back at a superstar's career, and you go back and you kind of chart that early success. And I guess, like I said just on the bit there, that it was Cotto's brother, right? Jose Cotto, that fight where he got rocked. But then if you look at that kind of upward trajectory of the fights he had since then, what one really stands out before we got to the big superstar fight, Floyd? Which one really kind of, okay, this kid might have something a bit special?
Well, I think we saw glimpses in all of them, you know, like in the Cotto fight, and also what we saw with him is a guy who could throw combinations, you know, had that lovely left hook and that sweeping left hook that all Mexicans somehow inherited, but always maintained his distance, you know, never rushed his work. I think that's a quality that, you know, especially when you're young, and he's still only young then, he's still only like 19, 20, and he's not rushing any of his work, and I think that's the maturity already at a young age. It's something that you thought, hang on, this kid might be a little bit special, might be.
Yeah.
There was still a question mark over him, and he obviously gets the world's title shot against Matthew Hatton. They did a great job. Matthew Hatton did tremendously well in that fight as well. Then gets Ryan Rhodes, the two British fighters on the spin, but then he gets Shea Mosley. Okay, an age
but you get that name, don't you?
But that's a different. Again, we talk about the mental part of the game. That's not a super fight, but it's a bigger fight. Because everyone knows Shea Mosley is. He's a star of the sport, and he might be on the latter end of his career, but he's still a star of the sport with tremendous hand speed, you know, still tough. And that was maybe when you thought
there's something there.
He coped with everything. Because be a superstar of the sport, it's not just having the ability, the power, and all the rest of it. It's how you cope with the occasion. Does it consume you, or do you just soak it in and use it as a superpower to show how good you are? And I think he did.
He did. It's funny because we've got Canelo over there, right, who's becoming this superstar, and you've got Oscar, his mouthpiece, right, and Oscar's fantastic at selling fights. And on the other side, you've got the genuine pound for pound number one, right, the biggest star we've probably ever seen in boxing, Floyd Mayweather. They would come together, and at the time it would be the biggest fight revenue-wise we've ever seen. Oscar saying, I've got this young kid who can beat Floyd, who might slightly have started to be on the decline a little bit. Why was that fight so big? Why did it break all box office records?
Well, it's huge because, you know, you've got this young kid who's just walking through everybody, it seems, who's looking good in doing so. You've got Oscar De La Hoya, who's still one of the biggest names in the sport, pushing it. It always looks like I'm looking for someone for revenge for my defeat, which was a close fight, by the way. And you've got Mayweather boxing out of his division, natural weight division.
Yeah.
How long can you go on for? But I thought it was a shrewd move by Mayweather, because I think I remember doing it at the time thinking, he's getting Canelo
early.
Yeah, get him now before he gets better. And I think he but I think what he didn't realise is, Floyd Mayweather, is that he made Canelo a better fighter.
Explain that. How? Canelo
learned so much in that fight. Everything. Temperament, tactically, technically. Because Canelo was totally outboxed. Forget about this one crazy scorecard. He was totally outboxed. And he looked like a fighter. He felt sorry for himself in the ring. You could see it. You could see his face drop. He couldn't find where Mayweather was. Mayweather's in front of him and he's throwing punches and he's not there. Mayweather does a great thing. He moves the chin out of the way. He rides the shot. Who does that now?
Canelo.
He does it beautifully, does it. And he does it with the turn and the pivot with the front foot. He moves all his body with it. Where did you get that from?
Perfect.
Get it from Mayweather.
Got it from Mayweather. Sometimes a fighter, when they lose their O, right, it breaks them. I think we saw that with Prince Nassim Hamed. He's one that sort of springs to mind as a fighter that as soon as he lost his O, he lost his power. For Canelo, although he suffered defeat, it seemed to make him, and he went on to become not just the biggest name in boxing, the biggest pay-per-view star in boxing as well.
I want to caution to keep this fight clean at all times, protect yourself at all times, and what I say you must obey. Good luck to both of you. Touch them up.
Canelo drops the mere palm. A big shot landed by the Mexican fighter.
Canelo is someone I fought, and I think that he has to be up there as one of the best fighters in the world. The speed, the power, the movement he has. I think every fight I've seen him in, he's only getting better and better.
Callum Smith was expected to be a big danger in the super middleweight division, and yet he beats him emphatically. If you look down the record, that shows a man who is fearless in being ready to take on the best. Once the bell starts, once the bell rings and the fight starts, he brings that attitude into the contest as well.
He predicted a KO and he's heating up.
No other guys have belts. This is the champ.
One thing he does extremely well, and one thing he's become over the last 5 years, has been one of the best defensive fighters in boxing. He's punching your arm, but he's also rocking away at your midsection. He's also killing you with uppercuts. He leaves more opponents befuddled in the ring than anyone I've seen since Mayweather.
He's very quick to spot where the weakness is in an opponent. If that's to the body, that's where he'll go. It's one of his assets, but it's only one.
He basically is able to take the opponent's strengths away and expose his weaknesses. So he clearly sees that. He knows how to adjust in the ring.
The thing that separates Canelo in the ring is his speed. Like, he is so fast and just so accurate with his shots that he makes opponents afraid to throw their best punches because he's going to hit them back with something even bigger.
You know, post-Floyd, I watched Canelo, and although he did suffer defeat against Floyd, I look at him and I almost feel like I'm watching a perfect fighter. This is a guy that won the Undisputed at 168, won titles at 160, won a title at 175. Look, you're the former world champ, you're the former boxer of us. When you watch him, do you feel like you're watching a perfect fighter?
Close to, I think. I think what I say with Canelo is he's an ever-evolving fighter from Mayweather. Always took something from one fight, as he did with that one, and brought it into the next one. It stopped. Right? He didn't do it forever, and I think recently he'd stopped doing that. But he didn't need to, and that's the, and I'll tell you that we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think every fight he learned from the one. He took something from that and that's a unique quality that almost no fighter does. Take a little bit from that, take it to the next fight.
What did he take from
Golovkin
one? Controversial.
Okay, the first Golovkin fight, he did what you had to do against Golovkin. Now he took a fight, well, gutsy move taking that fight, by the way. Because Golovkin was, who wants to fight Golovkin? But he boxed Golovkin, tried to box him in the first fight. No, and it was hard for him. You know, he took some great shots and he rode the shots. He took the Mayweather stuff and was riding the shots as best he could and fighting back with the qualities that he had. But then in the second fight, he realised that actually he could take the punches because he has one. Look, by the way, them two of the best chins in world boxing, by the way, when they met. He could take the shots and he put pressure in the second fight. He changed the whole dynamic and he put pressure on Golovkin. He made Golovkin box. He made Golovkin use his jab and have to move. He changed. He learned from the first fight and adapted to the second fight, and he's done that throughout his career. It stopped to a point because
because he didn't have to evolve.
He didn't have to evolve. That run, that what was it, 13-month run to unify the super middleweight division, which is phenomenal, by the way.
And against unbeaten fighters as well.
Oh, mate, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it's just phenomenal stuff. But what he did, his reputation preceded him by that point. So he just come out there. And I know people say we wax him in the arm to deaden their arms. All he's really doing is making you feel the power and putting a panic on you straight away, making you panic with the front foot. He learned that from Golovkin, by the way. That's the thing that Golovkin gives you. Makes you panic with that front foot. So you're thinking, ooh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
It's almost a bit like, for our younger or older viewers, Highlander movies, Where he chops your head and takes your power.
Yes,
so he's beating them and taking their powers.
You see what they go, what do you do against me? I'll try that, that works. And put pressure with the front foot, makes you feel the power early, and then you panic. So what happened then in that super middleweight run, even though he was still good and still doing all the things that work for him, he was just a bully in the ring. He was whacking them around the body, making them panic. They wouldn't be able to box to their true selves because they're always waiting for something to come back. So then he could just go about his work whenever he felt like. He dictated the pace by doing that. And that's what happens when you become a superstar and people know how good you are. Your reputation only gives you a 2-round start.
Yeah, so many chapters for Canelo in this story, right? A story that started at 15. We move into another chapter now. May 6th, he takes on John Ryder. I guess the question is not just what's left in Canelo, but can he ascend back to be the pound-for-pound king of the sport?
If everybody in boxing had the attitude that Canelo has, boxing would rival the NBA and hockey in popularity. Simple as that. People tune in to big fights.
What would make you take part in the toughest sport in the world? Well, your desire to win, your desire to create history, your passion for boxing.
You have to give Canelo credit, you know, he took the hard route up. He's fought everyone you name. He's fought the best out there. There's still a few names out there who, you know, want to fight him, like Charlo. You got Demetrius Andrade. You got so many good names there. But in my opinion, I would say Canelo is probably the best in the world in his division.
This is a guy that's concerned by legacy and achievement, and that's nice. You know, it's nice that they still remain in a sport that has become dominated by money and politics and fame.
It's funny saying this is a new chapter for Canelo because let's not forget he's coming off the back of a win against Gennady Golovkin, right? Ended that trilogy. But it feels like that, right? I think people are now saying what's left in the great man. Again, this is a guy that's been fighting since he was 15. What's next is John Ryder. May 6th, he goes back to Guadalajara. The last time he fought there was Ryan Rhodes. He clearly loves having a brick coming out. But what is left? What are the targets out there for him? And this isn't looking past John Ryder because that's the first hurdle. But if he does get past John Ryder, and look, a lot of people are expecting him to, does it go 175 again? Does he welcome the challenges of David Benavidez? What next for Canelo?
But again, what is next? Because what has he got to prove? That's the thing. Because you have ambitions when you start to be a world champion, and then it evolves from there. Great fighters want to be the best ever. Well, he's not the best ever, but he's one of the best ever.
He has to be. Yeah.
So where are you going from? But if he like you said, he lives the lifestyle. He lives it. He's healthy. There's not a lot of wear and tear on him, I would say. Still, amazingly for how long he's been professional. But what's your motivation? I think
is Bivol the motivation? Is that the one?
I think go once. You've got to get Bivol down to 168, which is not fair. But I think going to 175. I think that experiment, even though he's 1-1, I think it's failed.
Remember, he was trying to. Let's not forget this, by the way. He wanted to fight Makabu at cruiserweight.
But he wanted to fight Makabu.
Do you think he regrets not doing that?
He didn't want to fight other cruiserweights who were bigger. Well, no, because he might. Well,
yeah, but no, we can't discredit that. I mean, Roy Jones wanted to fight John Ruiz. Didn't want to fight Lennox Lewis.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're right. No, what I'm saying is, but I mean, they stepped too far. I think he's found 175 was a step too far for him.
Yeah.
Even though he beat Kovalev, he struggled, and that should have been a warning sign for him. But again, when you're great and you're good, and your ego tells you can do more than that. I can do it. Because he's always banked on himself. It's almost always worked out for him. So I think whatever he wants to do. He's a bigger star in boxing, and he can paint his own picture. But I think this is his weight.
Yeah.
I thought middleweight was too much of a stretch. I thought Golovkin was going to be.
I thought 160 was his weight.
Yeah.
I still look at him at 160, and I still think there is a 160 guy in there, but there's no challenges at really at 160. What about the idea of him going back home? Again, this is a guy that's fought pretty much the back end of his career all in America.
Oh yeah, Vegas.
The idea of him going back to where he was born, Guadalajara, that must mean a lot to him.
Yeah, and I think stylistically the opponent in John Ryder is a good fit for him.
Same size, aren't they?
Yeah, but because John's clever in what he's given credit for, but I think he has to be aggressive, and that'll make for a good fight to watch. And you tend to think that's going to bode well for Canelo. So it's a good fight, good homecoming fight for him. But yeah, it's good. And why not give back to his people? Like, I guess why wouldn't he?
Yeah, give back to his people while he still is at his peak.
Because there's an argument over who's the greatest Mexican of all time, and I think the love of the people is always with Julio Cesar Chavez.
Considered by many as one of the greatest fighters of the last half century. Ladies and gentlemen, Julio Cesar Chavez!
And so him fighting at home will help with that.
Helps the debate, helps the argument. Is there a route in the next couple of years or so where you can see Canelo being pound for pound king again? This is a guy that had that title for like 5 or 6 years up until that Dimitri Bivol defeat. Are there fights out there, a route where you can see him in the next sort of 18 months being that guy again, number one?
Yeah, of course. You know, great fighters do great things, and he certainly is a great fighter.
Yeah, look, he is a great fighter, and hopefully we can see great things from him and his opponent, John Ryder, someone he knows very, very well. May 6th, live on DAZN, Canelo goes back home to Guadalajara to take on the Brit, the guy that they call the Gorilla. Should be an absolutely fantastic fight. Make sure you tune in.
So, Canelo